take their seats, please. We're gonna start. There's the entire first row is empty. Anybody want to sit in the front? No? Thank you, sir. All right, thank you guys so much for coming. We have like a great group tonight. Show of hands, how many of you it's their first time here at this event? Wow, we have a lot of newcomers. So thank you so much for coming. We are FutureWard Central, and you are here at FutureWard Forum. This is a platform we created to share knowledge between communities, and we wanted to make this place somewhere that people can, from different backgrounds, can just come and just share their knowledge with everybody. So if you feel like you have something that you want to share that can add value to this community, please, we would love to have you speak. So you can come and find me after the talk. If you're interested, I can tell you all about it. So for this month's event, we actually have the great honor of hosting with Anchor Taiwan. And so before we get started with our main event, I'd like to invite the CEO and founder of Anchor Taiwan, Elisa, up for a couple of words. So let's give her a hand.
Thanks, Stephanie. How is everybody tonight?
Good.
Good? Awesome. So I'm Elisa, and who here thinks that Taiwan is great, Taiwan is amazing, Taiwan is awesome? Raise your hand. Woo! That's awesome, because we also happen to believe in that as well. And that's why we put together this 30-day program to make it as easy as possible for international entrepreneurs, professionals, and creatives to come to Taiwan, work remotely, and live like a local for a month. And throughout this month, in addition to business connections, industry access, that we actually facilitate through relevant introductions and also events that we put together like this with our local partners. We also care a lot about including cultural immersion into the 30-day to make it a very comprehensive and holistic experience. So we have upcoming cohorts in November and January next year. We got some really outstanding people coming through. So for example, we got a company that went through YC. We got an executive producer who runs Michael Bay's VR company. We got a CIO that runs more than 40 hotels in Europe. So we have got some really amazing talent that I would love to put together like events like this to introduce to the local communities in the future, very soon. And tonight, I'm particularly excited because the guy that I'm going to introduce to the stage, this is his 3rd week in Taiwan through the Anchor Taiwan program. And I've been telling everybody that I met that, oh my God, I got this batch, I've got like a model participants in my cohorts. This guy is smart, funny, compassionate, and he has got tons of stories to tell about crowdfunding and brand development. So, through the privilege of spending a lot of time with him, I have got a lot of really awesome backstories about how they started from nothing, from building guitars by hand, one by one, for 700 of them at his parents' garage, to crowdfunding and raise $500,000 through Indiegogo, and another $500,000 through pre-orders, and further on raise more VC and angel fundings, to now having their own dedicated facilities in China with mass productions and distributions to more than 40 countries in the world. That sounds like a pretty amazing journey, right? We all are curious about how they actually made that happen. So, without further ado, let's give our hands together to Shaun Lee, co-founder and chief product officer of Bohemian Guitar.
Elisa, you just said like most of my intro. So, yeah, as Elisa said, my name's Shaun. I'm the founder of Bohemian Guitars. Just a little more backstory on Bohemian. My brother and I were born in South Africa, and our parents moved us to the US in '98 because at the time Johannesburg had the highest crime rate in the world. And my mom had a cousin in Atlanta, Georgia, and she packed up and moved us there. I had never been out of South Africa, I'd never been to America, and all of a sudden we moved to a new country. And I started playing the guitar when I arrived as like a means of an outlet of some kind. And over the years we would travel back to South Africa to visit our family, And I would continually see these street musicians in the poor township areas who couldn't afford to buy a guitar. They'd have to build it. And a common item was an oil can, Castrol. There's a big Castrol oil company in oil plant in South Africa. So all the discarded Castrol oil cans, they would take those and they'd put a broomstick on and they built a guitar. And I would continually see this. And after I graduated college and had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do with my life, I just said, all right, well, I'm going to go to South Africa and figure it out. And when I was there, I was like, this is 6 years ago now. I decided, you know what, I'm going to just take on a hobby. I started building these guitars when I returned to the US and kind of just organically grew from there. And as Elisa said, today we are in around 250 stores in about 40 countries, and we have our own dedicated manufacturing facility right outside of Shenzhen. And it's been quite a journey, and along the way we've used crowdfunding and branding to really take advantage of the journey and expand as a brand and grow as a company. And our first crowdfunding campaign was in 2012, and it was a bit of a proof of concept to, hey, should we actually do this? Let's see if this is going to work. And I'll go into more of it as we go on, but through that process of crowdfunding, we started really building a brand. And it was almost unintentionally at first, but we started to really realize it and capitalize on all the different aspects that we were learning along the way. So what I realized was that your story as a brand is probably the most important aspect of your brand. And then it's also probably the most important aspect of your crowdfunding campaign, the story that you tell. So while this is a crowdfunding brand development presentation, I'm really focusing on the brand story specifically because, quite frankly, we could talk about crowdfunding and branding for hours. So I wanted to focus on the one thing that I think is most important. And then please feel free to interject and ask questions or ask questions at the end, and we'll get going. So what is a brand story? And this is a quote I love from Jeff Bezos. Your brand is what other people say about you when you're not in the room. And I think Amazon's the perfect brand that captures that essence completely. You know, like the amount of conversation generated about Amazon is incredible, and that's a major aspect of their business. Prime is a good example of it as well. They're constantly trying to figure out how different ways they can incorporate Prime into your life, so you have no choice but to talk about it. And if you think about it, your story isn't only what you tell people, but it's what they believe in you, right? So there's a level of your story that you aren't actually telling, right? Your story is almost told by people around you as well as yourself. And I think Amazon's a great brand that does that. So you kind of have to figure out how to do that. You got to build your story. Now, obviously, you have a story, a basis, right? This is who I am. This is what I do. This is why I did it. This is how I got the idea. And this was kind of our base. We want to be an industry-transforming guitar brand. And our story starts in the streets of Johannesburg, South Africa. And when we were formulating this, and it was almost unintentional at the time, but we realized it later, we left a lot of questions on the table. And it made people want to ask us questions. It made people want to interact with us because we weren't laying everything out there for everyone to see. And so, we realized that beautiful music can come from the simplest of materials. And we used that a lot in social and branding, and it created a lot of buzz because no one really knew what those materials were. We weren't using the exotic woods that every other guitar brand in the world was boosting about. So we started a conversation. And that's a super intricate part of your brand story, right? Getting people to talk about you is probably the most important thing that you can do. So we continued the story, and we were, I don't want to say we were, kind of dissing any other brands, but we were stating something that we thought was super obvious, and this was a conversation starter. And we knew it would be. The guitar industry is antiquated, incredibly antiquated. Most guitar owners are, 45 to 60, and they have over 4 guitars. So when we were telling them that the guitar hasn't changed in decades, and we were actively making this apparent everywhere we went, we started a conversation. People had no choice but to talk about us. And what we would do is we would show up at places and events where no one expected us to be, just to continue the conversation. I would show up at tech conferences. I was there when Spotify was releasing their new something, and I was a little guitar brand in the corner. Everyone else had an app, and I had guitars. People had no choice but to pay attention to us because we kept showing up in places where we weren't expected. And that is just continued effort on building this whole story, this innovative brand, and trying to take over the market. It's your story's never complete. And this is just another step in the process. As you go along, you have to constantly be aware of your story and building on it. So, what our story, 2 brothers from South Africa moved to the US and start this guitar brand. And, it kind of, as time went on, just build onto that story, and more conversation and more interest would, just generate. So, you got to develop your story. The best brands are built on great stories. And as I said, you have to develop your story over time. You can't just come up with it, one day. And one concept I really like is marketing often happens when you're not listening, right? Yeah, you are putting ads out there, doing AdWords, you're doing retargeting, your Facebook ads, whatever it may be. But a lot of the marketing happens when you're not listening, when customers tell their friends, or when a conversation starts wherever it may be. So as you're building your brand, as you're telling your story, you have to take into account that the message you're portraying needs to be something that people want to talk about. And that's really true for crowdfunding as well, because the campaigns that rely on the traffic organically generated by Kickstarter and Indiegogo are not going to succeed. You can't put your campaign up there and say, okay, well, Indiegogo and Kickstarter get millions of hits a month. People are going to see my campaign. It's simply not true. There's thousands and thousands of campaigns, and you're going to get buried in them very quickly and not be featured anywhere. So it's all about the story. You have to get people talking about your brand, and if you can get people talking about your brand, you're going to get noticed. So we try to create the conversation. As we started building, we realized that there's so many lifestyle brands in the world, but there aren't really any in the music space. There's Quicksilver for surfing, there's Vans for skateboarding, there's a lot of these kind of brands where, their main product isn't necessarily their main focus. Vans is a skateboarding company, but the majority of their customers don't skateboard. That's fact. So we just continue to try and create the conversation. It's always been in the back of our heads. How can we continue to make people talk about us? We have to stay relevant at all times. Look what these guys are doing, look who they're talking to, whatever it may be. So we decided, let's really push this lifestyle thing. You may not play guitar, but you may love our message, and you may want to wear our t-shirts, or you may want to help us spread the word. So we just continue building our story. Then we started expanding even further. Okay, well, how else can we continue people talking about us? We need artists to play our guitars. We need to continue the story. So by partnering with artists and kind of sharing the content appropriately in the right arenas, we were creating conversations between our customers and their friends. And we were watching this take place on social. We would watch conversations between customers on our Instagram feed. People would just be commenting and talking back and forth, replying to each other. We were literally generating conversation without trying with one single post. And that just continued to build on our story. And what's really cool about that is you learn about yourself, things about yourself you didn't know. And you see customers talking about things and aspects about your product or your business that you never thought about, and you learn just as much as you grow as a brand. You learn about yourself and your brand as well. So this was another aspect of just us building the story. And me being here today and being in Taiwan is just me building our story. We want to continually evolve and create conversation. Okay, so why do you need a brand story? A brand is no longer what we tell the customer it is what the customers tell each other it is. Sam Cook from Intuit, Scott. This goes right on to what I've been saying. Your product's only part of the story. And a potential customer's relationship with you is going to start before they have your product. Right? The relationship that you have with a potential customer happens before they even have your product in hand, because they have to discover you. Right? So you have to be telling a compelling story to make them want to take that next step and make that final purchase and actually become a part of your community. And that's like the foundation of your brand, right? It's a strategy for growth, getting the message out so that people want to communicate and talk about it. So how did we do that? Well, we decided that there aren't any guitars out there where people actually get to connect with. Cool, my favorite color is red, I'll get the red guitar. But that was the extent of it. If you are a new guitarist and you go into Guitar Center, every single guitar on the wall looks exactly the same to you. There's no difference. There's no way to really connect to it on a personal level. So when we started making our guitars, we realized, well, we're going to make our own tins, right? So when we first started, we were using the vintage tins just like the South African street musicians. I was going picking on the weekends and like going to barns and finding old oil cans and cleaning out all the grimy oil and making guitars out of them. As time went on, we realized, well, they don't make these tins anymore. They use plastic. We're going to run out of them soon. So we're going to make our own tins. And it was during that realization, we're like, man, we have an opportunity to create a crazy story. We have an opportunity to create so much buzz, opportunity for people to connect with us on another level that, no other brand out there really allows you to connect with. So this is our motor oil model. And what we've done is kind of create brands within our brand, and all the copy, all the design, everything on our motor oil model is unique. Every one of our models has their own logo, have their own copy, have their own designs. There's t-shirts that go with them. There's guitar straps that are the motor oil guitar straps. So there's different collections within our guitar line and our bass line and our ukulele line that are brands of themselves. So the motor oil model, we find people who used to work on cars with their dad growing up. They gravitate towards the motor oil. Or they're just car guys. They love cars, but they love music. They go to the motor oil. It's another opportunity to create connections. And we really realized this with our first crowdfunding campaign, because at the time we only had 3 designs. And we were getting so many questions like, oh, can you do this? Can you do that? People wanted custom designs because they have their own store that their dad has been in their family for 100 years. They love their logo on it. So we realized that's kind of where we realized the importance of creating connections. So we have a surf wax model. We found a lot of people in California loved our guitars, so it was one of our big markets. So we came out with the surf wax model to kind of target that audience and create connections. The sound matches the design. The surf wax is very bright and rich. It's got a surfy vibe. Lots of people who play that type of music tend to gravitate towards this. They may be beach bums playing on the beach. So it's just another opportunity. I know I'm being redundant, but it's another opportunity to make connections. And if you think about what a crowdfunding campaign is, right? It's a group of people coming together to try and make a dream a reality, or a product a reality. It's probably someone's dream that you're contributing to. And it all comes back to the story. You have to make those people want to be a part of your dream. And I think that's parallels perfectly with your brand in general. You have to make people want to be a part of your brand. And we do that through our messaging, but we do it through our product as well. And so this is a surf wax. I'm not going to go through all of them, but here's our moonshine model. It's got a bluesy twang to it. It's got 2 single coil pickups, which is very bluesy, rocky. We find a lot of country musicians play the moonshine model. Country musicians, so just another opportunity. And as you can see by the content and the photography, we've catered it really well towards the story. So we've got really great metrics showing that. You know, when we advertise the motor oil model in a hot rod magazine, it goes wild. We've been featured in car magazines with our motor oil. We've been featured in surf magazines with the surf wax. You know, like we're getting a lot of good feedback that this strategy works, and it all comes back to, you know, telling the compelling story. So, how do you actually begin to tell a story? Okay, well, marketing is no longer about the stuff you make, but the stories you tell. At its most basic, your story begins at the very first moment the customer sees your logo, or hears about you, or sees your colors, or sees your content, or your ads, or whatever it may be, visits your website, reads about you on social. You know, that's the very basis, beginning of your story. So, you know, we have our logos and our fonts and our colors, and you know, we remain consistent throughout all of our storytelling, whether it may be on our actual products or our social or our website. There's a cohesiveness between everything that we do, so our story is consistent, and people people automatically kind of see that interaction and that connection, and that goes with our crowdfunding as well. So, you know, if you're looking at our video and our crowdfunding campaign, and you scroll down the page, the colors and the fonts and everything is cohesive, and that's important. You don't necessarily notice it right away consciously, but it does provide a customer with a connection to your brand, and it's memorable that when, you know, they may see your logo somewhere else, there's like a connection made, and they can kind of gravitate towards it. And then obviously social is really powerful and strong. We spend a lot of time working on our social, just generating community and a buzz about us, and I think that's probably one of the more important aspects of your crowdfunding campaign, right? You're generating a community, you need to get the word out there. It's not going to happen organically. It's just the reality of crowdfunding. You're never going to organically succeed. It's just the truth. You can throw a campaign up, but you have to work towards it. So, you know, social branding is like storytelling and is super important. Yeah, we've focused a lot on that. And then engaging with our community. I mean, since day one, since my first guitar I built that worked, which was probably guitar like 100, I've been engaging with people to play them and started the conversation. I started conversations from day one. I unintentionally started it. I dropped out of school to build guitars out of cans, and people just started talking about it. But on social, we're actively engaging with people, and it's just continuing our story. Because now Chase has posted about us to his social. He's got a great YouTube page. He's told our story now to numerous people, and he's generating sales for us now. He's got his own unique code, and he generates sales for us monthly. And it's just him continually telling our story. And you know, getting your community involved early is important. That goes for crowdfunding and just, you know, your general branding. You know, crowdfunding specifically, you should be spending maybe 4 to 6 months prepping for the start of your campaign. Every single person you know and every person they know and every person they know needs to know that on this date I'm starting this crowdfunding campaign. And it's through things like this, just building your community and embracing it. It's going to make that super easy. So today, people are the most effective marketing channel for your brand. I think we've touched on this pretty extensively. It's true for crowdfunding and just for your business generally. You have to build your brand over time. It's not going to happen, but it's a continual process. And it's going to make engaging with your community, it's going to make growth, it's going to make crowdfunding, it's going to make everything you do a lot easier. And you just really have to focus on generating conversation so that you can add to that story that you've been telling and build on it. And you do that by creating conversation. So I know I focused mainly on the story because I figured leave enough time for some Q&A. And I think when I first started the company, I knew literally nothing. I'd never started a business. I had no idea what I was doing. In fact, I didn't actually know I was starting a company until like 6 months in, and I realized I was selling these things. I was like, oh, well, I have a company now. So I understand the value of events like this because this is what I did for years. And I would show up at tech conferences, even though it was unrelated, and I would go to events and finagle my way into the back and learn. And the perfect example of that was my brother and I snuck into an event in San Francisco. Super long story, but we met Dave McClure, who runs 500 Startups. And a year later, we were in 500 Startups. He invited us to come in. So I understand the value of these events, so I wanted to leave enough time for everyone to ask questions, and hopefully I can provide a little insight. And maybe we can all learn from each other. I'm sure there's a lot of people here who have good insight for everybody else as well. So, yeah, does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, great story, really. There was one bit that I'm really interested in, just from my own experience with my own company is,
Sure.
Are you a musician? Do you play the guitar?
Yeah, so I'd always played guitar. I wouldn't consider myself a musician.
He's too humble.
No, but I mean, in terms of your product, obviously, I guess in business, your product still needs to be good.
Sure.
Even with the marketing or a very effective marketing campaign behind it. But
Of course.
how did you get the expertise to have people like Billy Gibbons turning around saying this guitar is awesome?
I spent a year and a half to 2 years building guitars, 18 hours a day, every minute of the day, reading books, watching YouTube, figuring out how to build a guitar. I probably built 200, 300 before any of them worked.
Okay.
I literally know every single thing you could ever know about a guitar now because I went to pawn shops and I bought $40 guitars and I took them apart and I put them back together, then I took them apart and I put them back together. And then I went to Home Depot and other pawn shops and bought used woodworking machinery and metal cutting machinery. One day my parents went to work and I literally moved all the furniture out the basement, put a huge blue tarp down and a folding table, and that was my workshop. I moved their furniture into a storage unit, and I just started building guitars.
An awesome part of the story, thank you.
Anybody else?
You make a bass?
Yeah. We have 7 different bass models.
And also,
And ukuleles. Any crowdfunding questions? No?
I actually have a question.
Sure.
You get some of the biggest stars to use your product, and you're featured on some of the biggest media platforms. How did you make that happen?
A lot of for the musicians, it was just hustling. If a musician was playing in Atlanta, I would tweet at them and say, hey, I have a guitar for you. I'd love to come to the show tonight and give you a guitar. So there's a band called Of Monsters and Men. That's what I did with them. They were playing at one of the famous venues in Atlanta called the Tabernacle. I tweeted at them, I was like, I have a guitar for you. This is the first time it worked. And their tour manager replied and said, oh, awesome, be at the side door at 4 p.m. And I was like, there's no way this works. And I showed up with a guitar at 4 p.m. and I went in and the whole band was flying drones around the theater. I gave him a guitar and he played it that night on stage. And I've done that. I did that for Megan Trainor. I got Megan Trainor ukulele. Hosier now has 5 guitars. I showed up at the side door to a venue in Atlanta called Chastain. It's a big outdoor arena. I literally showed up at like in the morning and just waited for his tour bus to show up. And I literally was holding the guitar. And then he took me and I hung out with him the whole night and and now he has 5. Literally just every possible means I can think of to get to anyone. A lot of the press has happened organically, just luckily. I can't think of any specific ways. I mean, we've used PR companies from time to time, but a lot of it's been organic.
How about from the very beginning? Like in the beginning, like how did you first get yourself featured? But did you like try to build connections with journalists, or did you talk?
I just went to every arts and crafts show in the Southeast I could think of. I would build guitars all week, then I'd go to an arts and crafts show on the weekend and sell them all, and build all the next week and go to the next weekend. I did that for like 2 years. And I think just at those, there's a lot of people go to these little shows. Like we met the buyer from Urban Outfitters at a show with maybe 10 little booths. You know, that's what a lot of these big buyers go to these big press and buy. They go to these tiny little shows just to find these little, treats that are hidden.
Yeah, can I follow up?
Yeah.
So you've done obviously a massive amount of legwork and lots of hard work, which obviously a lot of entrepreneurs forget about that they actually have to do.
Yeah.
You haven't mentioned price or the value of your product
Sure.
at any point so far. So I wondered if you could just elaborate a little bit on that, particularly how you've correctly identified a big space in the market for guitars where there's been very little innovation.
Sure. So our guitars have 30% less wood than an average electric guitar. So our costs are drastically lower, especially if you're looking at the bigger brands like Gibson and Fender, because they're using high quality wood, even though it makes no difference because it's physics. A guitar pickup is made out of an electromagnet. It's magnets wrapped in copper wire. So that's why the strings are metal, so it can pick up the vibrations of the strings. So when these big brands are pushing these exotic woods, there's a level, it doesn't make sense. Magnets don't pick up anything from wood. So it's, we kind of honed in on that. Our bodies cost a fraction of what theirs do, which allows us to drop our price, maintain really high margins. We're about $165 below the market average.
Hello, thank you for your speech. What challenges me the most whenever I do anything, whenever I think of a project is when should I be alone and when should I look for allies, for people to work with me? So my question is, when did you realize, okay, now I can't do things by myself? I mean, I think that you didn't create all the graphics, you didn't create everything. When did you ask for help? And who are the people you asked for help, etc.? Can you stress this part?
Yeah, I mean, I got to a point where I was going to arts and crafts shows every weekend, and I knew I didn't want to do that for the rest of my life. There's just no way I was going to do that. So my brother and I were like, let's try a Kickstarter campaign. This was 5 years ago. At the time, it was like not very popular. I mean, there were not a lot of campaigns. We'd never heard of it. The only reason we did hear of it was because we went out to San Francisco for an event and someone said to us, have you done Kickstarter? And we were like, what's that? So we kind of researched it and we're like, let's do one. It'll be a proof of concept. If people buy these things, he'll quit his job, I'll drop out of school, and then I was in grad school, and then we'll roll with it. So it got to a point where we just needed to make a decision on whether or not we wanted to actually pursue it. It was something we were passionate about. And I did think I could do everything on my own in the beginning. That first campaign we did. We were successful, but barely, and we got we violated like 20 Kickstarter rules, and they like stopped our campaign. They didn't stop our campaign, but they removed us from feature, they removed us from, so like, I didn't know what I was doing. I think that was a big eye-opener. We barely succeeded. We made a lot of mistakes, like every mistake in the world during that campaign, and that was a point where I realized, okay, I'm gonna need some help.
Another question here.
Hello, my name is Gary. I want to know, I have two questions for you.
Okay.
The first question is about, have you applied any patent application before or after you launch your product into the marketplace?
Patent?
Patent application, patent.
Yeah, so I have a patent on the guitar.
Yes. And second is about when you start to break even after you launch the
When did I start to break even? Oh gosh. I don't even remember.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm sorry.
sorry to be intrusive.
No, that's okay.
So what is your roadmap? What's the barrier? I mean, why are you in Taiwan and China? What is your path?
Yes, so mainly we've been focused on B2C, right? We're selling direct to consumer in the US, Canada. As our traffic started growing, we were getting a lot of interest from Australia, all over Europe. Problem is, it's pretty expensive to ship a guitar across the country, across the world, and you risk damage. I mean, our guitars, the bodies are made out of metal. It's 0.3 millimeter thick tin, so it's just thick enough to like maintain sturdiness, but thin enough where you still pick up some cool vibrations. So there's potential for damage during shipping. So what we've moved into internationally is more of a wholesale / licensing model. So we're working with distributors all over Europe who are now essentially licensing our brand. So that's enabled us to expand to pretty much every country in Europe. And then we just kind of want to continue the expansion. So I'm in Taipei with Anchor Taiwan just to learn about the market here, make some connections, and see if we can expand into this side of the world. Japan has the largest electric guitar market in the world. So, there's a lot of opportunity here that I haven't touched on. And, we're doing really well, but we've literally barely scratched the surface. The guitar market is actually really large, and it's screaming for a brand like us. Last year, 85% of Gibson's revenue is non-guitar related. They're not innovative. People, they don't need a Gibson anymore. They don't need to spend $5,000 on a Gibson. So there's room for us to come in. So that's kind of why I'm here. And then there's a lot of other products in the pipeline that we're working on. We have a guitar in the works. It's got a built-in amplifier. So now, it actually comes out. So you can take it out and put it on the table. So there's those type of things that we're innovating as well. So there's products and different markets that we're trying to expand to.
Hello, Shaun. Good evening. My name is Brian. I want to first thank you for sharing your experience with us this evening. I think it's been wonderful, your experience. My question, first off, is much of your talk today has been centered around making your story and sort of forming your story.
Yeah.
Now, my question is, how do you form a story around something that's much more ephemeral or a service? For example, for you, it's an object, and so wrapping a story around that is much more easier to sell to consumers. But what about something more intangible, such as a service? For example, myself, I'm an inspiring MC. What is your advice in forming a story around that service?
I mean, I think it just comes to getting your passion across to people and making them want to connect with you. That's first and foremost. I have a large customer base who doesn't buy our guitars. We get people asking us for stickers because they just want to support us. So I think step one is making a connection, connecting with people. Especially today, this day and age, people are in need of connection more than anything. I think if you can make that connection, it's super powerful. I kind of always live on this mantra that there's always someone out there who has worse problems than you do. And I think of it like someone has cancer and they've been given a year to live, which is awful. But there's someone who has cancer who's gonna die tomorrow. Right? So there's always someone who has a worse problem than you. So I think I live on that mentality, and I think it allows me to connect more with people because I want to have connections. And I think that has a lot to do with why we've been successful. When I was at these arts and craft shows, I took the time and talked to people, and we took pictures, and I stayed in touch. I have a customer, his name's John St. Jean. He's in his 70s. He has one of every product I have. So he's got 21 instruments of mine. He calls me probably weekly. And it's because of the connection that we made. It was a guitar show called NAMM in Anaheim, California, the biggest guitar show in the world. And I took the time and connected with him, and he's just one example of people that I've done that with. So I think personal connections are more powerful than anything. And if you can get people that want to connect with you, then you're going to connect with them, and you're going to organically grow.
To clarify, your connections, you mean by your own personal experience and the shared history that you're able to form this relationship with?
Sure.
I see. Thank you.
But I mean, there's only a certain level of what I understand a brand that I created that I believe in, right? I mean, there's people out there who create something, they create a problem, right? When you create a problem, what problem can I solve? You know, I didn't try to solve the problem, this just kind of fell into my lap. So the connections I have I feel like are organic. So if you have a business that you created because you thought of a problem in your head, then I don't necessarily know how you're going to connect with people, because it maybe I'll be something you personally connect with. So I think that step one is your product or your business something you actually care about. And if it is, then making other people care about it too should be the easiest part of the process.
Thank you.
We have a question at the back.
Hello. Yeah, just want to know if you, did you bring it? Because you're telling the story, I think people want to see one.
Yeah, I left it at the apartment.
Oh no!
It's like a mile away from here.
We did ship one over.
like 5
We
minutes.
had-
Beautiful.
Yeah, I know, I
we
totally-
actually saw it.
One little girl running there.
We had an open jam last week,
Yeah.
during which he actually played the guitar that he shipped over. But is it fixed, the string?
No, I didn't string it. It's okay.
Yeah, but. Ian?
So I have two questions. The first one is, you mentioned so the first one is that you mentioned that you travel around looking for like, is that part of the supply chain? You know, you travel to China, you have a production line in China. Do you find that quality control can often be lost, especially when your volume starts to grow? So that's the first question. And the second question is more pertaining like the whole sort of marketing and branding of yourself. Did you find that at some point you have to sort of start a movement? Because it was more like the engagement and getting people to shift away from the usage of those traditional guitars from your, sort of your type of guitars.
Yeah, okay, so the first question was regarding manufacturing, are we able to maintain quality? So I've been going to China for over 5 years or so, from factory to factory. I've probably been through 15 different guitar factories now to land on the right one. So it's just about putting your, I honestly hate it when people think made in China products are poor quality, especially when they're holding their iPhone when they tell you that. But if you put in the legwork, I mean, there's no problem. Our guitar factory are like my family. It's all about the connections again. They would, if I told them today I need 10,000 guitars, they would make them for me without me giving them any money. And I would, it's just about the relationship. The quality is incredible. They've put in, it was finding the right people who care about what I'm doing. And they've put in tremendous effort and got a whole new freestanding facility specifically for my production line. So I think, I've had major issues. I had a factory in 2013. Well, this is a really long story, but they stole all my money. I had 500 guitars ordered, people paid for them. The factory stole my money. The guy disappeared in Hong Kong. The Hong Kong police couldn't find him. I had literally $0 and 500 people who already paid me for guitars and no way to get them to them. So trust me, I've had factory issues. That's just one of many, but it was just about pushing through and just timing and finding the one that produces best quality. What was the second question? Oh yeah, starting a movement. I don't think we outwardly were rebel against all the other guitars or anything, but I knew early on that I wasn't going to replace Fender, I wasn't replacing Gibson, that's just never going to happen, but I'm a great addition to a collection. The average guitar owner has 4 guitars. There's no reason why it can't be one of mine. So it wasn't about starting a movement, it was about showing people how great of an addition we can be and how you don't have to spend a lot of money and, you know, to have a quality product.
Any other question?
Shaun, great talk, by the way.
Thank you.
You mentioned about the prepare at least 6 to 8 months for the crowdfunding campaign. Could you give more specific on that and what what approach do you have, or
Sure.
kind of social media to go?
So just generally, crowdfunding campaigns rely heavily on momentum in the beginning. That's how you're going to get noticed on Kickstarter and Indiegogo. There's so many campaigns, they can't feature everyone, right? They're gonna get buried quickly. It's all about maintaining momentum early on. And if you don't, I don't remember the exact percentage, but if you don't hit like 30% of your goal within the first week, like you're just not gonna succeed. So you have to hit the ground running like crazy. So there's just no time to waste, right? I mean, if you're gonna launch this campaign for 30 days, you got to put in the effort to make sure that that momentum does not stop for 30 days. So, if you have a year to prep, I would prep for a year. I mean, as much time as possible, right? I mean, when we did our Indiegogo, we were 880% overfunded, and we spent 6 months prepping. Every month, so there was me and my brother, and then we had 4 employees at the time. Leading up to it, every month, each of us hosted a party at our parents' house for all of our parents' friends and all of their friends' friends. And we had, we took out everyone's email address. Like little things like that. Just telling everyone around you, every person around you, this is the day I'm pushing launch. Please share this on social. Please, it's just all those type of organic things. There's just there's never enough to prep. You can never do too much. So if you have the time, I would say do it. If you want to launch it in 2 months, it's not impossible to succeed, but it's just going to be much harder. So when I say 6 months, it's just so that you're not rushing, right? So you make sure you can have everything in place. You need a video, a really good video, to be honest. It's the first thing people see. It's going to make them want to scroll down, hopefully. So you shouldn't rush that. Hopefully. It may take a month or 2 months to really make a good video and edit or prep. So it's just a matter of making sure you have enough time to prep. Yeah. And then I guess it depends on what your product is, right? But if you have a physical product, do you have manufacturing in place? What happens if your goal is 1,000 units, but you actually sell 100,000? It's happened. The coolest cooler, I don't know if you saw the Kickstarter campaign, it was a cooler that had a speaker on it, a blender on it. It was this huge thing. The guy did way above. It was 10,000% oversubscribed. And he was nowhere near ready to manufacture that quantity. His factory could just not do it. So he started taking pre-orders on Amazon to get more money, and it just turned into one huge spiral. So it's just, you need time to make sure you're ready to go. And you need to make sure you have every single tiny aspect, taken care of.
Thank you.
Do we have more questions? Oh, cool.
Hi. I have one quick question. So Bowie, you mentioned in Hong Kong, you said you had a problem with the guy running away with your money. How did you handle that problem? It's a service question, right?
Yeah, listen, it's a super long story. At the time, I pitched Kevin Harrington. He was one of the sharks on Shark Tank, TV show Shark Tank. There was an event in Atlanta called the Shark Attack. And I pitched him, and I won the event. There was 30 startups, so he was kind of became our advisor, but he was the definition of a shark. And just through talking to him, and we had met other investors who just kind of grew interested in us, and it was just a matter of reaching out to the network we had built and said, listen, this is what happened to us. Look, all these people already pay for their guitars, and it was just a matter of getting lucky and finding someone to kind of bail us out. But I think we kind of created that luck over time. You know, made them believe in us, so they were willing to do that. But yeah, it was just a matter of finding someone to help us.
Did you know equity?
To that guy? Yeah. Yeah. We did.
Shaun, thanks for sharing your experience.
Sure.
I wanted to ask you about you talked about the crowdfunding at the beginning, and you mentioned making some mistakes while doing this campaign. Would you mind sharing just a few of them that could maybe help to avoid this kind of
Yeah. So I mean, Kickstarter's got a whole list of rules that are, some of them are simple but like meaningful. Like there's social media stuff. Like you can't. I think one mistake I made was like, and this was when I was super naive. I mean, I didn't know anything. I was like tweeting at celebrities, musicians, saying, "Hey, check out our campaign." And that was like a major violation from Kickstarter. Like I can't tweet at like, I don't know, whatever famous guitarist saying, "Hey, look at our guitars." Like we did that. Kickstarter was on me like in a heartbeat. So like things like that. I was not prepared to build that many guitars. The first campaign we sold 200 guitars. And at that time, I'm still building all of them on my own. And I had like kind of manufacturing lineup in China, but like not really, and I had no idea what I was doing. So that was the biggest mistake. It took me like a year to make those 200 guitars from that one campaign of like just building all the time. So it's just a matter of not prepping. You know, you have to have you never know what's going to happen. Our Indiegogo campaign, we sold like 3,000 guitars, which was fine because I knew I could handle that because I had put in a year's worth of work finding a factory before I pushed that launch button. So for a physical product, I think the biggest mistake people make is not being prepped with manufacturing in place. Right? When you put your crowdfunding campaign up, you put a date there. It says estimated shipping. 90% of people on crowdfunding don't know what crowdfunding is. They think they're ordering the guitar and it's going to come. Like, they don't realize that there's a level of unknown. They're taking a chance. There's no guarantees, right? They're coming together as a crowd to try and help your product become a reality. But there's so much lack of education on the average person who goes onto Kickstarter to finds a cool product that most people don't take that into account. So like, one big mistake is not literally laying out every detail. Like on your page, hey, these are estimates. We probably will not hit them. People will pledge your campaign because of your honesty. Like without a doubt, if you say, we really want to get these to you by Christmas, we don't know for sure if it's going to happen. That honesty goes a long way, as opposed to making promises that you're not going to keep and then you're just in for a year worth of awful customer service, which had happened to us. So, yeah.
Thank you. And I wanted to ask you also, for the first campaign you mentioned about having an order of 200 guitars. Did you have to focus on the location where you would target these people, or you made it more like based on digital markets, so it could be international? Or you prefer, you're coming from South Africa, but you are living in the US, so I basically guessing like there is a big demand in the US, but were you more focusing on central location first before having this 200 also distributor you mentioned, right, like before also?
Yeah, so the first campaign was really early on with Kickstarter, so the majority of their demographic was domestic. I mean, they were mainly US based. I think we had a few international people. So at that point, we were strictly focused on, the US. Our Indiegogo, we sold to 52 countries. Kickstarter was just that big, Indiegogo. But there were countries that I couldn't ship to. Estonia, I couldn't ship to Estonia. It was like $900 to ship a guitar there. That's the one that comes to mind, because it was literally going to cost me $900 to ship a guitar. I was like, that's like 4 guitars, dude.
All right, I think we have one last question. And then we have pizzas waiting for us outside. So any other questions, or should we wrap it up? Last chance.
You said pizza.
Okay. Anyway, we got last question here.
You said you found a nice manufacturing plant in China. Like, how do you tell if, like, what do you look for when you're looking for a good manufacturing plant?
So in the beginning, I was just too scared to stand on any toes. So I was like, yeah, it's good. It's, you know, like everything's fine. Now I literally stand and like watch every step of the process for like an hour. I watch them wire. I watch them hammer every fret and file. And I was just in China a few weeks ago, and I spent 2 days, 12 hours each day in the factory at every single station in the production line, and I watched and I intimidated. Because at the end of the day, it's my ass on the line. You know, I mean, we've had factories make 1,000 guitars or ukuleles that were wrong because I only checked the first few and they were great, and then it's happened. So I'm just, I was too scared to, it was such an unknown to me. I've never been to China initially. I had no idea the customs, how to communicate appropriately. I didn't know anything, so I was just too scared. Now, it's just a matter of, being authoritative. And, they work for you at the end of the day. But I mean, you still have to maintain that relationship. So there's levels, but that's what I do now. And my factory knows it's going to happen. It doesn't matter anymore. I'm not messing around.
So that's fantastic. So Shaun is still going to be around for a bit if you want to talk to him, kind of like in person outside. And thank you so much for coming. If you like the events tonight, we're going to have more coming up in November. Whenever we have batches, we're going to have events like this, inviting international talent, entrepreneurs, professionals to share their know-how, expertise, and all that, and to basically build connections with the local communities. That's one of our major missions. So follow us on our social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and we're gonna post more public events. This month we have a lot of music-related events. October 6th, we're gonna actually have Homer, who is sitting over there, who is actually a DJ and also an electric violinist, who is going to perform at Congress Cafe. So just come to our website, come to our Facebook to follow more events like that. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you FutureWords. I don't know if anybody is still here, Joe at the back, for providing us with a venue and also supporting events like this. Have fun, there's like food and drinks at the back, and let's make friends. Thank you.